To the front of the net. Puck work to the outside to Eklund. Howe back to Eklund again. Kerr sparring with Stevens in front. Eklund creeps behind. Out in front to Kerr. He scores! Tim Kerr and the Flyers are perfect on 5-on-3s. They are 3 for 3. Get their first power play goal of the night and tie the game.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.
And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 163. Yes, the Flyers training camp is underway, and we're going to make some observations with a real special guest. Just note that Dan Silver is on assignment tonight, and so he'll be joining us with our next show. We always like having Dan along, but of course we do have with us tonight Chef B. How are you, my friend?
Very good. I would like to take this time not to say anything about hockey, but wish our Dan Silver a very happy birthday, and I hope he's enjoying himself tonight on assignment.
Absolutely. On assignment. That's right. Some of that might include some cake. Yes. Happy birthday, Dan. But before we introduce our guest, just a reminder, the O&B Puckcast can be followed on Twitter at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. And we're on 12 or 13 different podcast platforms. I always lose count. Of course, we're on Apple, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeart. And of course, we have our own YouTube page. Just go in there, type O&B Puckcast, and we'll come up, and whatever you prefer. But most important thing is make sure you subscribe or follow, whichever applies. And it helps us climb the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast, and that really helps us out, I should say. And it really, we've noticed it like the last year, Chef. It's really been growth has been explosive. We really, really appreciate that. And of course, any 5-star review we get on Apple Podcasts, we'll definitely read for you. But without any further ado, from NBC Sports Philly, I'm tongue-tied tonight, and back with us, Jordan Hall is going to tell us about the Flyers training camp. How are you, Jordan?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing okay. So the Flyers have played, 5 exhibition games now? And reading your notes, they're 1-4. They've been outscored 12-5, but they've been missing a lot of guys. They've been dinged up. Some guys who probably could have played had it been a regular season. And then, of course, you have the different category of injuries with players like Sean Couturier, Ryan Ellis, of course. Give us a kind of a feel for just what the vibe is with training camp so far.
I think the preseason results speak to two things. One, it is very early, and they haven't had some of their best players on the ice. Cam Atkinson hasn't played yet. Carter Hart hasn't played yet. Travis Konechny and Ivan Provorov have played one game apiece. Of course, there's no Sean Couturier or Joel Farabee. So obviously the goal total is a little concerning, 1 goal per game, and 2 of those goals have come at 5-on-3 power plays. So very early, I wouldn't overreact to a lot of the results in preseason, especially given John Tortorella has implemented system work so late in camp that almost more than half of the preseason games so far have been more so get out there, show us something, show us effort, show us work ethic, and let's get familiar with these players. But on the other side of the things, I think it speaks a little bit to the talent deficiency the Flyers have, because if you're having kids go out there and just play, you would expect at least one or two of them to go out and make a play, do something to stand out, score a goal, and they just haven't had that. So I think it speaks to two things. One, it's early, and then another thing is that the Flyers have a talent deficiency. They know they need more high-end talent, and they just don't have it right now. So one concern, and I think one thing not to overreact to.
Yeah, Chef?
You spoke, and he's on my list of people to watch this year. Cam Atkinson. I mean, what we're here. I mean, they're kind of not like really. There is no real timeline, or for him. I understand he's still like week to week or whatever. But you think they plan on hoping that he's back and becoming one of the leaders of this team? If not, I know we'll probably delve somewhere in the week 2 about who's going to be a captain and who's going to wear letters on his team now. And I'm sure since he played for Coots that he's probably one of the leaders because from, and I'm not trying to dog Kevin Hayes, but he looked like he's still missing a step, so to speak, or maybe didn't come to camp as better shape, or is he still feeling the side effects from the surgeries and all? So let's just see. I mean, I'm just wondering, since I spoke to those two guys, do you think Kevin's 100% yet, and what's the ETA on Cam, you thinking?
Kevin Hayes, in my opinion, has actually looked great, and I think he's healthy. I actually thought he looked like one of the better conditioned guys in Tortorella's skating, which was a real gauntlet. It was taxing. It's nonstop skating. They didn't even touch pucks on day 1 in training camp, and I thought Hayes actually looked pretty good. Now, listen, he's never going to be a flashy player. Like when he first came here, he even joked with us that he's not the best skater in the world. It's nothing flashy, but as long as he's using that reach, using that length, using his size to protect the puck and make things happen, the Flyers are going to take it. So I actually think he's looked pretty good, and I do believe he's turned a corner from all the issues he had in his core muscle area, that 3 procedures, an infection in his blood. I think that's all in the past now. They figured it out, and I believe he'll be ready to be Coach Tar, and I think he wants to take a serious stride here, given I think he feels he's been disappointed. He's been disappointing over the last 2 seasons here, and a lot of that had to do with injuries. So I think he's eager and primed to take strides here. Cam Atkinson, I'm not too worried about. He's more of a day-to-day issue. He's been practicing. He's a vet. He's 33. I think he knows his body, and they're just not pushing it too far here. I really don't think Cam Atkinson needs preseason games. He's a goal scorer. He's played in the league a long time, over 10 years. So I think they're just erring on the side of caution, and I expect him to be in the season opening lineup, no problem. Last year, he nursed injuries all year. He knew when to take a morning skate off or a practice. So he's been around the block. I think he knows his body well, and I don't expect any issues with him being in the season opening lineup. If he's out of the lineup, I'd be very surprised.
Now, I'm with you on Kevin Hayes. I have been pretty impressed with him. And you have to remember, look, these are exhibition games. Like you said, a lot of these guys don't need these games. And they're probably giving like 80% effort as it is. Maybe a little bit more this year with Tortorella trying to be a pace setter and to be a role model for some of these kids. Well, what's going on with Ivan Provorov?
So it was a little concerning when he missed practice on Friday. And it was for maintenance reasons. And I don't think it's serious, but the reason I say it's a little concerning is because he's such a machine that he never takes days off. And this practice was a day after a day off. So he had the day off, and then he still needed Friday to be off the ice. Now, again, maybe he wanted to push it, and the Flyers said, no, like, we don't, Ivan, like, get off the ice. We have a week before the regular season. Like, we don't want to risk it. Take the day and come back Saturday and then practice. But he did miss practice, and they called it a maintenance day. He's been on the ice Saturday and Sunday. I think he's fine, but clearly there is something there because he just wouldn't be off the ice for no reason. But again, I don't think it's anything real serious. I think they are erring on the side of caution with everyone, especially given what they went through last year with injuries and guys coming back probably too soon and suffering re-injuries. But I expect him to be in the season opening lineup. I don't know if he'll play in the preseason finale, but I think he'll have no problem being next to Tony DeAngelo on October 13th against the Devils.
Carter Hart in the same category?
Carter Hart, the same thing. He's been practicing since last Tuesday. Hasn't been in any games yet, so I wouldn't be surprised maybe if there's some early rust, but they believe he's fine. And again, just erring on the side of caution. He's been day-to-day now for like a week, and he's been on the ice. When I've seen him on the ice, he looks fine. Like, he's doing everything. He doesn't look restricted. So he'll be in net on October 13th. But it will be interesting to see if he gets Tuesday night's preseason finale. He said he wanted a game. It's been a while since he's been in a game because he was hurt at the end of last season as well. So I think in a perfect world, they get him in there Tuesday night, let him feel the puck, let him react to game action, and then they'll have a week leading up to the opener to really make sure he's ready. So no issues there for Carter Hart.
Gotcha, Chef.
So, all right, I guess we're doing injury roll call here. Let's do that. Coots, we gotta ask about Sean Couturier. Now, me and Isaiah are both bad backs, bad necks kind of guys. So we have multiple injuries. So how does that get misdiagnosed so bad? I mean, maybe it's just from an outside perspective looking in that it's come to this, but we both know how bad those injuries can be from experience and history ourselves. So how does it go from being like a 3.5 month thing to 4 weeks with no surgery?
Backs are a really scary, tricky thing. And I think, as you guys can allude to, given you probably have dealt with back pain, I remember when they first announced that Sean Couturier was having back surgery in February, and I asked Chuck Fletcher, do they believe this surgery would resolve the issue in its entirety? Will there be any lingering effects into this guy's later years of his career? He's 29, and obviously he plays a demanding position. He's an all-situation player. Would this back thing be an issue later on, or would this surgery be a cure-all? And they didn't have any concerns, but they can only go really off of what the doctors are telling them. But I was concerned when I heard the injury was a back injury last February and he needed surgery. I was thinking, well, will this linger? And I think from all accounts, he was doing okay in the offseason. I think he was dealing with some setbacks from what he told us, but that sounded like it was just minor setbacks, things that they expected through training when he kind of ramped things up. And he deemed himself healthy about a week or so before camp, and then something happened where I think the pain just gradually got worse, and he was dealing with some issues while sleeping. And it's concerning to me. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. Again, this is not a young kid. He's 29, and he's an awfully important player, and it's a back injury. It's not a broken bone. It's not something that heals on a strict timeline. It can come and go. It can flare up. It can be good one day, bad another. So I think it's concerning. I think it's a good sign that he didn't need surgery, and they're still deeming him week to week. But I mean, the injury was originally called a week-to-week upper body injury back in December, and it ended up requiring surgery, and it ended his season. So week-to-week can be very indefinite at times. So I'm concerned about it. I feel bad for Sean Couturier because I just think he's such a fun player to watch when he's healthy, and the Flyers really need him. And, I think he's been through a lot over the past, however months it's been, since really December when they originally diagnosed his injury and had to put him on the shelf. So, but I think it's concerning, and I just really think the Flyers don't have a firm read on when he'll be back and what the process will be. But there's a lot of gray area to it, and that's, to me, is what's alarming.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, he could come and get a clean bill of health and then get out there, skate a couple shifts, take a hit, and then everything is back to chaos again. It's just, with those type of injuries, as you laid out there, I mean, it's really sketchy, right? As he begins an 8-year contract, and you said 29, but those are really high mileage 29-year-old. This guy came right into the league, and it's a concern for the organization and their future. So, it bears watching. So, no use to talk about Ryan Ellis. It sounds.
If you were worried about Coots, then you gotta. I mean, but I guess there is one question to this. When do when do they decide? And for everybody else out there, I guess. Can you explain to them what happens if they decide that he's more than LTIR and this is a career thing, and how does it affect their cap from in the future for some of these people? Because I know a lot of guys are out there saying, if he's going to retire, he should just retire. That way we get our money back, that kind of thing. But it doesn't always work like that, right?
No, and it's really complicated. I don't know, really. I don't know what's going through Ryan Ellis's head right now. If he's thinking already that this is career threatening, like how close is he to believing that it is career threatening, or is he still rehabbing? They're obviously they've been pretty hush hush about it, but Chuck Fletcher didn't rule out that this could be a career threatening injury, and clearly it's just a mess. They're calling it multi-layered. It's in his pelvic region. It's got everything included, and it's a shame, because he's an important player that has term on his deal for a lot of money. So I don't know exactly how the Flyers are going to approach this. Obviously, LTIR will be probably in the equation coming up here when they start finalizing their roster. But it does not seem likely that he's going to play at all this season. And maybe there's an announcement to come during the year. Maybe they hit a point where Ryan Ellis knows it's time. But I'm not sure they're really at that bridge yet. I think right now they're just realizing reality that they don't exactly know how to heal this thing. They don't know how long it's going to take. So I think they're figuring it out as they go. But it does not sound promising whatsoever. We knew July would be an important month for him. That's when they were really going to ramp it up in his rehab in terms of getting on the ice and seeing how his body reacts. And clearly things did not react well. I'm assuming he was dealing with pain and issues after he was on the ice. So just a shame. It's tough to predict. I understand the guy has had an injury history, but if you look back, none of the injuries were in his core area. This was a new injury. He suffered it in the preseason finale last year. He had told us that he's never dealt with this injury before. I believe him. I think he's a man of his word. It's just weird. Sometimes injuries crop up like this, and they're tough to predict. It's a shame for the Flyers, and it's a shame for Ryan Ellis and really the fans who I think we're looking forward to seeing this guy on the ice and play a lot of minutes.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, he would have solved a lot of problems for them, but hey, that's the way it goes. All you have to do is do a Wikipedia on the psoas muscle, Psoas, I think it is, and you see the way it wraps around into the spinal muscles and then down into the groin area. And if he's got multiple layers of issues.
Yeah, it's also, isn't it like a labrum too? And also like a piriformis?
That's your hip. Well, it might be the piriformis is right. You're like your L5S1 area. Yeah. Lumbar, but without getting, it's not orthopedic hour, but
that's true.
Yeah, it's crazy, but you can be quite knowledgeable. I mean, first time when Eric Lindros had all those knee injuries, like we all learned about brain injury from Lindros, and we also learned that a sprain, when they say a sprain for a knee, I think it was Joseph Torg, the orthopedist at the time, was saying, well, a sprain is a tear. Like, I didn't know that. So now we're all, you don't have to stay at the Holiday Inn Express. You might learn a lot just following the Flyers. But we must well wrap up the IR with Joel Farabee, who probably has the sunniest outlook, having had the disc replacement in the cervical region. And he's raring to go, but they're going to hold him back, I'm sure, until they feel that he's at less risk.
Yeah, I think they're being extremely cautious with him. He's 22 years old and such an important player. And the neck is no joke. That's a serious injury. So he hasn't been clear for contact, but I've seen him kind of ramp it up a little bit in some drills, and they're starting to push the envelope a little bit. I think if they really wanted to, if it was the playoffs or something, I think Farabee could probably give it a go. But they're in no rush whatsoever. So, maybe it's a couple weeks into the regular season and he's back in the lineup. But he looks good. He's been on the ice for months now. He's practicing. He's just not taking real hard contact. But, artificial, he's got an artificial, plate there, like basically in his neck. It's he's one of only 3 players to have that now in the NHL. So a serious surgery, and they're gonna be cautious with him. But he looks good, and I think the Flyers are crossing their fingers that this is completely resolved, and eventually, once he gets in there and he takes contact, he feels like himself, and he'll be a key piece moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. He's looks like he's going to be a pro's pro for many years to come if he can stay healthy. He was taking some contact. It was kind of like a mini whiplash. He was having a battle in front of the net without getting too crazy. And I could see where that would be of value. That's for sure. So look, there's a whole bunch of other players who happen to be healthy and on the ice. And a lot of them are battling for jobs, and there may be some surprises. And I was kind of looking at a list of players that are kind of like maybe some are on the bubble, some have kind of won the day. And I think one of them who stands out more than the rest among the younger players has to be Noah Cates, who kind of arrived last year. And you were just hoping into this exhibition season and through camp that he would continue that momentum. And to these eyes, he has. What say you?
Of all the additions they had at the end of the season, and they had a good number of them, given that they lost 57 games and they were totally turning the page to next season, Noah Cates, I thought, was the most impressive. 5 goals, 4 assists. He can scale your lineup. He can play center a little bit. He can play both wings. And just a real smart kid who works hard. He was a 5th-round pick in 2017 out of high school. So he had a long road to get to where he is, and he's worked for it. The organization loves him. I remember multiple summers ago, Shel Samuelson said their player development team just couldn't stop bragging about the kid. They just love everything about him and how hard he's worked. I think he's poised to really take a spot in the season opening lineup because of the injuries they have at forward. But I think he's a kid that can really help now. He looks like an NHL player to me. I've heard people say he looks like an NHL player to them, and those are people inside the organization. So I think he's got the eyes of the new coaching staff. Management has been high on him for a while. So I think he's going to be a guy that can help now and it should be in the lineup. And I think he'll be impactful. I think he's a piece of the future, and that's exciting. It's exciting when an organization can find a kid out of high school in the 5th round and turn him into a player. You don't always hit, but when you do hit, it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Chef.
Well, let's stick with the Cates then. And then my next question would be Jackson. I mean, he's been actually a very pleasant surprise because just didn't think, in my opinion, that he was going to get to that next level. But here, lo and behold, Roussel's released, and Asimov is hurt. So realistically, I mean, he probably starts down on the Phantoms because they got a little bit of depth left, but not much. Do you see him as somebody getting that late season call up, especially, the way he's played with his brother? They've been pretty good together. I mean, considering it's preseason now.
Yeah, he's been really impressive. We talk so much about Noah, but Jackson's a nice little player in his own right. I think he's had a really good camp, nice preseason, and they are so thin at center. And with no Couturier, no Patrick Brown, Tanner Lazinski hasn't exactly grabbed the bull by the horns. And so I think they could potentially need Jackson Cates, maybe even in their season opening lineup. I'm not sure, but I think he's right there. I think he's right there in the picture, and he's the guy they're debating whether they're going to want him at 4C to start the year. If he's not, I think he's going to be a call-up option throughout the season. And again, just a lot like Noah, he's a smart, well-groomed college kid who can play a little wing, better at center, but he's defensively sound. He's not going to score a lot or be a real threat that way, but he might surprise you and he can kill penalties. So again, these aren't the flashiest players, but they can be impactful in your bottom 6. Noah, I think, can maybe climb a little bit. I think he can maybe be a second-line guy or a third-line guy. I think he could even play on your 4th. But I think Jackson Cates is right there. I think he's put himself in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Tanner Lazinski, and when he's got his north-south game going, there was a shift last night. He just broke down the defenseman, took the puck, really good, effective forecheck. And you're probably right. He hasn't really grabbed the reins quite yet, but I see something with him, and he's still working out a lot of rust. I like his chances of making the squad because of his positional versatility and the fact that he's usually on the right side of the puck. But I'm curious what you think and what you might be hearing.
I agree. I still think he's the front runner for that 4C job because he's 25. I think he's got more offensive upside than Jackson Cates, and he is known for his two-way game. And I think those qualities are ones that John Tortorella and Brad Shaw and Rocky Thompson will like, in terms of he's typically on the right side of the puck. He's smart. He can be trusted defensively. And I think there is some ceiling there in terms of offense. And you do need some offensive qualities in that bottom six, especially on the fourth line too. It can't just be nothing but checking. You do need to have some upside and some secondary scoring potential. And I think Tanner Laczynski provides that. I don't think he's been too impressive in the games, but I like his camp. He's a really good forechecker. He gets after it. And I think he's still that front runner for the 4C job with the injuries, and even Jackson Cates having the camp that he's had. I think Tanner Laczynski, when healthy and not dealing with all the hip stuff that he's dealt with, when healthy, I think he's a nice little player that the organization wants to figure out who he is. He's 25. He's only played a handful of NHL games because he's really just dealt with so many injuries, similar to Wade Allison. They got to figure out if these guys are NHL players, if they're not. And I think they're going to want to get a good read on them. Yeah,
absolutely. But before we go to Sheffield, you mentioned Wade Allison. I mean, it's right up towards Alley with that player. And I don't see how he misses the team as long as he stays healthy, right?
I agree. To me, they have like 2 to 3 winger jobs open. And I think he's got his hands on one of them. He comes up and he has energy. He has spunk. He forechecks just like John Tortorella wants. His legs are always moving just like John Tortorella wants. Not to mention, he's got one of the better shots in the organization. So they're going to struggle to score goals. They did last season, and I think they are this year. So you need a kid to come in there and at least be a threat to score goals. And Wade Allison is. I've liked everything I've seen from him. Again, it's just a question of whether he can stay healthy, maybe know when to pick his spots in terms of like really going all max out. Just stay healthy. And I think he should be in your lineup, especially when they're dealing with injuries up front. I think Wade Allison's a guy right there with Noah Cates. I think we should see him in the lineup. You got to figure out who these players are. They're not 21-year-olds anymore. They are 24, 25-year-old guys that soon will no longer be waivers exempt. So you got to figure out who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Chef?
Well, speaking of waiver exempt, how disappointing are they in Isaac Ratcliffe right now? Because here's a guy who played fairly decent when he called up, actually played better at the NHL level than he did at the AHL level. And then here he gets his chance really to shine for a brand new coach. You know, he's in the last year of his, ELC. This is pretty much, I guess, is it the last hurrah for him? Is he something, or is he a piece that they can use? Because obviously nobody wanted him. He cleared waivers, so there's not much trade value there. Is there something they could still harvest out of this?
Yeah, I think there's still some hope. I don't think they've totally given up on him, but it didn't speak well that he didn't even make. He's in the initial big round of cuts. It didn't speak well to what he did in camp in the preseason, that he wasn't among these final 40 plus players in camp competing for the final jobs. I think they're still trying to figure out who he is. And I think he's trying to figure out what kind of player he is. He has the size and, the ingredients to maybe be a solid bottom six guy where, he uses his length and his reach to be disruptive and to maybe be a secondary scoring threat and to forecheck and do all that fun stuff that coaches love, but he just can't really do it consistently. I think sometimes he gets pulled in that direction of he's still a 50-goal scorer that he was at the junior level. And, the reality is he's just not going to be that top six guy probably in the NHL, but a really good kid. I enjoy talking to him, and he always has a real positive outlook, and I've heard he works hard. So I don't think they're totally done with him yet. But they did run the risk of losing him, and that tells you that they understood that risk was now, and they couldn't really keep him in the picture right now. So, again, not all hope is lost, but I think time is certainly ticking on him. He's no longer on an ELC. He re-signed in the offseason. I believe it's just a 1-year deal, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, it's such a make or break time for so many of these prospects, and Isaac Ratcliffe really being one of them. We'll see what he can do down in Lehigh Valley, see if he can put some points up and really show them that he can help whenever they need it injury-wise.
Yeah, that's right. And then it is a 1-year deal for Ratcliffe, like you said. So, there's a couple winger spots that a couple players are vying for. 2 young players, Ollie Lixell, a Swedish player who's shown flashes of skill and some offensive creativity. And of course, Tyson Forster. It's tempting to look at him and think that maybe he could start his career here, but he's in a crowded right wing situation, and he probably could benefit from getting a whole year of pro, or at least a couple 30, 40 games in Lehigh Valley. What's your say?
I really like Tyson Forster. I think they hit on that pick. He's got things that the organization has needed, and that's an advanced shot, a shoot first mentality, those qualities that they've been kind of yearning for. And he's a real kind of confident, cocky kid. Like when you talk to him, he resembles a pro. He doesn't resemble like a shy kid who's just starting to do this. So I think sky's the limit for him. Ian LePerriere even said that quote to us the other day, sky's the limit for him. But I do think they're going to get him in Lehigh Valley, let him play some pro games. He missed a big chunk of last year because of the separated shoulder and the surgery he went through. So you don't want to rush kids. And I don't think they're in a pressure spot here to like be competitive, or I don't want to say be competitive. They do want to be competitive this season, but they're not in a pressure spot to contend right away. And they don't even know if they need goal scoring yet. Like they probably will. We're probably going to see them struggle to score goals, but at least they can start the season and get a read on things and then see where they are and see where Tyson Forster is and say, hey, we need this kid now. So I think the read is they're going to let him go to Lehigh Valley, let him go score some goals, let him play on the power play and play big minutes. As far as Ollie Lixell, yeah, nice kid, Swedish, a lot of skill. I think he's getting used to the North American ice. I project him going to Lehigh Valley, but I think he's a guy to keep an eye on, especially if he puts up some points. You can definitely tell he's played some pro hockey in the SHL, really good league over there in Sweden. You can tell he's not new to this in terms of playing against men. But I don't know if he's going to crack their roster to start. But again, certainly I got to keep an eye on.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, Lehigh Valley would definitely be a more interesting team to watch this year. Chef? So
you talked about it. They're going to be difficult to score, I think. I think what we've seen in the preseason so far is, they're 2-0, 3-1, 4-2 kind of thing. I think this is going to be a motif for the season that they're going to get stuck with being outscored. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there'll be situations where Carter Hart and the goaltending can steal a game or two here. And just by the way, the team is, they got to Torts is coaching them. Let's not rule out the Torts factor either. But are we in for a season? Is it safe to say we're in for a season of hurt when it comes to finding a goal song, I should say, to dance to? Because it doesn't seem like we're going to be doing a lot of dancing.
I agree. You saw it in the off season when they didn't go out and really address, major holes up front. They got Nick Delorier and they really focused on shoring up their defense, getting Ryan Ellis insurance and Tony DeAngelo, and solidifying their third pair in Justin Braun. They had talent issues last season, and they didn't really address it up front. So they're going to be relying on kids. And I think they did that because they know it's a transitional year. They might not come out and say it because they do hope that John Tortorella makes them a lot more competitive and really helps them prevent goals and at least gets some structure and some – and they at least stabilize from that standpoint. They've allowed far too many goals over the last season. So at least you can cut that down and be more competitive in that area. But I do really see them struggling to score goals. It's just what they have right now in the organization. Maybe a kid surprises us. Maybe a Wade Allison stays healthy and puts the puck in the net. Maybe Noah Cates turns into a 15 to 20 goal scorer. I'm not saying that, but maybe some guys, answer the bell, but I do see them struggling to score goals this season, and I do see a lot of low-scoring games. Tortorella will make them more competitive, and he will add good structure that I think they've needed, but I do worry about them scoring goals, and it might be, at times, some boring hockey to watch if you love offense.
Yeah, it's a concern, but their goaltending is definitely a concern as well. They've taken some injuries with Sandstrom. I'm not really sure what's going on there. And Samuel Orerson has been a pleasant surprise, albeit, again, it's exhibition games. We haven't seen Nate McKinnon firing on him or Landeskog or any of the players of that ilk. But I mean, so Carter Hart probably could play, assuming he's in there. And even if he doesn't get the game coming up tomorrow night, if he's in there on the 13th opening night, who's got the inside track on the backup? Is it Troy Grosnick, who hasn't, I mean, he's looked okay? Or is it going to be Samuel Orerson, that I just mentioned, who looks like he should be getting a lot more volume of work?
Yeah, I really thought Felix Sandstrom was the front runner to be the backup. I think the organization was starting to look at him as, hey, we need to give him the chance here to play NHL games and take that backup job. It's kind of been a long time waiting here, a long time coming to for him. But he's got the lower body injury. We don't know how serious it is. It could be day to day. It could be week to week. We haven't heard quite yet. But if he is not available, I actually think Samuel Orerson maybe has the inside track at it. He had a great rookie game performance. He's shown really well in the preseason. And they've said they want to look at some younger kids in net finally. They've done some of that, patchwork with the, veteran backups for a while now. And I think they just realized the season to start looking at their kids is this year. And again, if they're contending and they're more competitive and they realize they need some more experience in net, they have a guy like Troy Grosnick, or they can go out and maybe look externally and try to find a veteran goalie. But right now, not a lot of pressure to win the Metropolitan Division or really compete for a playoff spot in my mind. So why not see what you have in some of these young kids? Samuel Orerson is only 22. He played well in the SHL before last season. Now it's just to prove if he's healthy and see what he can do. So I think he'll be a guy that maybe look over instead of Troy Grosnick. You kind of know what you have in Troy Grosnick, and he's only here on a 1-year deal. Samuel Orerson has more potentially to be here in the future. So that's my read on it.
Gotcha, Chef.
So, okay, say if we go the route that Grosnick's our AHL guy and Orerson because Sandstrom is hurt, I'm fine with all that. But does that cut the weight? Does that take the pressure off of Hart now? Because you don't want to look at your young backup goalie. You just don't want him sitting on the bench and playing only like. So does this make the split bigger for your goalies now? Since it, like you said, it's not a big season. So instead of like the 65 split or whatever, do you think it's more close to maybe 60-40 to where you get to see a lot more of Orerson? Because like you said, you're going to need to know what you got, right? And it doesn't matter this year.
In some ways, yes, but I do think they're looking for Carter Hart to maybe take on some more games. He's got to be healthy. He's dealt with injuries before, but he's played 40-plus games a couple of times here. And I think they're looking to see him take a stride, join the upper echelon of goalies here. And, he's 24. He's no longer a baby anymore, but he is still young. And I think they're looking for him to, to become their number one, firmly their number one. He always kind of had that veteran backup behind him that could kind of spell him here and there and, to kind of keep the training wheels on Hart a little bit, by having that veteran backup that's been there, done that. I think now is the time for Carter Hart to really firmly put himself in that number one spot. But yes, I think they do want to start seeing some of these young backups and trust them, not just say, hey, we don't know if they're ready yet. Let's keep them in the A or, keep them overseas. It's time to start to see who they are. But you also want to have stability in net. And, if Carter Hart somehow deals with an injury and suddenly you're relying on guys that have only played 5 or 6 NHL games in their life, that's not pretty either. Like, you don't want to let the wheels completely fall off and just say, hey, kid, get out there and good luck. But they will give him a look. And, but I think they're hoping not to rely too much on Troy Grosnick and Samuel Orerson and Felix Sandstrom. Like, kind of ease them in a little bit. But really, they're hoping Carter Hart is the guy and he stays healthy and he's being the most important player on the ice because they're going to need him to be.
Yeah, it's time for him to kind of emerge like he did in 20 and kind of reestablish himself. But it's perfectly natural for players, goaltenders in general, when they're kind of rushed into this circumstance like he was, although there was injuries back a few years ago, to have their ups and downs. And hopefully this is the year they're hoping for that position to stabilize, to use that word again. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, real quick, has Anisimov's injury kind of taken him out of the picture, or is his, relationship with Tortorella, have him bought a little bit more time, perhaps?
Yeah, I think he's kind of out of the race right now. He hasn't practiced ever since the preseason opener. He hasn't been on the ice since blocking that shot. So the injury doesn't look too promising, and he's had an injury history before. He's 34 years old. If he had stayed healthy and he had shown well, I think he would have been right there because they are so thin at center. But at this point, I don't see him really in the picture. We don't even know when he'll be back on the ice in terms of practicing. So he's been off the ice, and he's 34. So, yeah, I don't see him right now competing for the fourth-line job.
Gotcha. Just a couple more from me. Jordan, really appreciate your time tonight. The information is dynamite. Really appreciate it. Looking at Lehigh Valley, and we were just referring to earlier some players that were probably going to end up down there. And this is going to be the first full year and in a regular year for somebody like Tyson Forster likely to go down. I think Igor Zamula is probably going to end up down there as well. And then you have Elliot Denoyer. What are we just expecting a little bit out of Ian LaPerriere that things would go a little bit better? Because last year it was kind of like it was a little bit of a cluster F. It was like very uneven, some good hockey, and then really tough watching at times. So what's your sense talking to people about his expectations for, that particular club?
Yeah, I think they really want to see more from Ian LaPerriere, and I think they still trust him in terms of player development and being the right guy down there. He does have a good blend of lightheartedness, but also, the ability to be demanding on these kids. I think he's a good guy from his playing days in terms of these kids looking up to him and knowing he's been through the wars, and he's a guy that worked hard for everything he earned, all that fun stuff. But John Tortorella told him to coach his way, that, he wasn't too hell-bent on, hey, I want you playing my way down there, so when these kids get up here, they know exactly what they get. But their styles do mesh. Tortorella does a lot of the same things that I think LaPerriere likes to stress. But yeah, they're going to want to see some strides this year, because I think he has more at his fingertips down there this year with kids like Denoyer, Tyson Forster, Igor Zamula. There's definitely some prospects down there. I think they're going to be a good ticket. I think if Flyers fans are interested in taking the trip up the road, I think Allentown's a fun place to be. It's a really nice facility for minor league hockey, and I think they're going to have some kids to watch there. I highly recommend it for Flyers fans if they have, a weekend free. Get up there, see some of these kids play. But yes, I think, year two, a little more pressure for a guy that's never head coached before in his life, ever. He's always been an assistant. He's always been in player development. Year two, I think there's going to be a little more, let's see what you got. Let's get some results down there, especially given there's a little more normalcy. Last year was, his first year doing it. You were still dealing with some COVID. You were still dealing with some injuries. I think it's a little more of a clean slate here and a little more expectations for Ian LaPerriere, but I think they have faith in him, and I think he's a good coach. I think he can get more out of guys down there. I thought he started to stabilize, and we kind of started getting them going towards the end of last season. So I thought that was promising. But there will be more expectations for Ian LaPerriere.
Yeah, absolutely. So as things stand right now, everything's status quo. Looking at what can happen, and maybe what happened last year with guys like Zach McEwen, another guy could be on the bubble, Patrick Brown, some of these pickups, and the Flyers were kind of really dependent on guys like that, which should have been a clue that what kind of year it was going to be. Do you expect that could repeat itself, that the Flyers might be in the market maybe for a veteran center, maybe a backup goalie, depending on other teams' roster shuffles before they have to submit the final roster, which I believe is October the 10th?
Yes, October 10th, 5 p.m. is when they have to submit that final roster. I don't see them being a player for anyone externally right now. I think they truly are, let's see what we have. Let's go with some of these younger players that are healthy. Let's figure out who they are, at least early in the season. But maybe at some point down the line in the season, I can see a couple instances where maybe they do look externally, whether that's, hey, some of these young players that we wanted to see are not ready, or we don't feel like they're pieces, and we need to get someone in here to provide a little stability. Or maybe they surprise some people and they are competitive and they deal with an injury or two and they're kind of in the race by December, January, and they want to go out and get some help, and they maybe kind of supplement things moving forward. So I think it'll be truly a wait and see, but right now I think they want to see what they have internally. That's the way they treated their offseason for the most part. I think they're going to let that play out. Let Tortorella put his hands on things and let him coach and see where they are, see what they have. Chuck Fletcher said that a number of times at the start of camp. He said, let's see what we have. I think they're going to hold strong to that. But again, they're always going to be looking. That's why you have pro scouting staffs. That's why you have eyes all over the place for when you have to adjust. But I don't think they're in the area right now where they have to adjust. I think they have enough to at least go into the season and field a lineup and let some of these kids play. Gotcha.
So, Chef, anything from me? That's all from me. I don't want to keep chewing on here.
No. I think we managed to somehow cover a lot. Everybody that was, I guess, going to be a bubble player on this team, up or down. So I think we did good.
Yeah, I'm going to fib. I do have one more player. Is Zach McEwen on a serious bubble here?
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't expect that. I really thought his spot was pretty almost solidified on the fourth line. But when they split up the groups the other day and they first did some on-ice system work Friday, he was not among
team one. Yeah, right.
He was not there. He was among a group that was about to get cut. A lot of the group that he was in was a lot of phantoms and younger junior players that were not really in the picture. So I found that surprising. One train of thought is that maybe they realize they have enough toughness on their fourth line with Nick Delorier and obviously
redundancy.
You have enough guys that can stand up for each other and throw their body around. And maybe they realize they can get maybe a little more of a skilled player on that fourth line, a guy that a little more offensive upside that can provide a little bit more. I don't think he's totally outside the picture just yet. Tortorella did say some of the guys in the groups on 2 and 3 probably could have been interchangeable, but I don't think he's helped himself in the preseason games. But he does work hard. He's a guy that works hard and grinds. I think he's got a little more skill than he gets credit for, but I was a little surprised to see him among the other group, and I think he's in a real fight for his job. And perhaps he's a guy that they realize they'll try to sneak him through waivers and get him to Lehigh, and if they don't, it's thanks for everything, but we're going to look at some other guys here. So yeah, he's in a real fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, I don't know what to say. Just thanks so much for coming aboard. And people are going to want to follow your work at NBC Sports Philly. Where can people follow you and catch up with your podcast?
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. It was great seeing you, great chatting with you guys. I enjoy following the podcast and hearing your work. So appreciate you having me. And if you want to catch my work, you can go to NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com and get all my written work there. We also have a podcast called the Flyers Talk Podcast that we record once or twice a week, twice more so during the season, once more so in the off season. And you can follow me on Twitter at JHullNBCS. So thanks again, guys, and really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jordan. Anytime.
Thanks, man.
Right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Right. All right. I always hate that part of the program where you have to, let somebody go and all. It's just, they kick them from the studio. So I'm being a jerk, But so interesting takes on some players. There's going to be some surprises because there always are surprises, right? So. Mm-hmm. It'll be compelling when they play the last game and it's up to the 10th, next week. That's a week from tonight, and they have to submit the lineup like Jordan was saying. And we'll see. I think a lot of it's going to be determined by injuries.
Yeah.
And but a little bit of a controversy broke out before we go, Chef, about Morgan Frost. What's he doing? I mean, he's got 3 points, and the Flyers only have 5 goals, so he's got points on 3 of them. But 2 of those assists were on 5-on-3 power plays, and this is the make or break year for Morgan Frost. He's also on a 1-year deal, and he's improved. If you look at his play away from the puck,
yes,
he's checked that box. If you look at his faceoffs, he's definitely improved. He's checking that box. But when he has to play without the kind of space that he gets on a 5-on-3 power play, I think he still kind of struggles in that regard. And while he's not like, Bill Meltzer says, he's not the biggest issue on the team, not everybody is under the kind of scrutiny that he is. So I think there's something to talk about with him in terms of, hey, is he going to be able to be at least like a 50-point player for them? And, this is 1 year, 800,000. And after that, he's an RFA, but the Flyers might be willing to move on at that point. Well, what's your general impression watching him play? Are you pleased? Is he popping for you and say, nah, Morgan's showing some things here? Or what do you think?
Okay. It was funny because I figured he would bring him up as one of those people that, like I said, like Radcliffe, this is the show me year. I mean, don't get me wrong. He got better. He got a little bit better, especially my knock was always on him. It was obvious in some cases that when he was playing center, that other people were picking up his center defensive assignments. It was blatantly obvious last season, especially at the beginning of the season. So this year, it looks like he got better in his defensive part of the game. I haven't seen anything yet that shows me that he's brought something next level. I think if he showed that he could pass on make those passes that we've seen him do in the past, but now it seems like either you get like defensive Morgan or nothing Morgan, or no goals Morgan. It's one of those things. I think he still hasn't figured out how to encapsulate his game into one entire game. To me, it's a little bit of a disappointment, but I mean, for this year, he's going to stick out more because he's going to be one of those people that they were relying upon to being able to be the playmaker, make those passes, maybe get some goals here and there. There is no more Voraceks. There's no more Claude Giroux's. Everybody's gone from that. That he was supposed to be the one being the playmaker, and we've seen flashes of it. And I'm not gonna. I know Dan still hasn't given up on him. I'm not gonna kick him on his birthday here, but I just think I'm reserving judgment because I still think I need to see a complete game from him. We haven't seen that yet. He's either excels in one area and falters in the other, or he's mediocre in both. He hasn't put together a complete game for me yet.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, while there are aspects of his game that I like, he's just not poppy. He's not announcing his arrival as somebody who's here to stay. Just kind of like Noah Cates is doing. I understand that the bar is lower for Noah Cates. But really, I mean, if John Tortorella has a choice between putting Noah Cates out and Morgan Frost, just 5-on-5, nothing special. The feeling is that Torts is probably going to want Cates out there rather than Frost.
He better at face-offs.
Yeah, well, and Frost is better there. In fact, he had a real good night the other night. But that's one guy's a first-round draft pick. And another guy's a 5th-round pick. So, and now we're 5 years into the program for Morgan. And yeah, one of those years kind of like was lost and all that. I just want to see more. So look, you got to be patient with players. You'd hate to see him, pop with another organization, but sometimes that's what can happen. He's had the 5 coaches. He's had 2 at the AHL level. He's had 3 now. I think he's on his 3rd at the NHL level, right?
Yes.
If you have AV, I don't know if he ever played with Gordon, but
well, he would have been Phantoms though, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
So Yo, AV,
Yo.
and
Torts.
now Torts. So yeah, lots of coaches, and look, lots of teams go through that, and players go through that until something happens where the player really comes on. So I just hope that he can show us a little bit more. It's because he's generally put in the best situations, but I'm worried about how he plays when he doesn't have as much room. And he does look stronger. He's keeping his feet moving. So it's not like there hasn't been progress, but I think some people are grading on a curve with him, and I want to see more. Maybe maybe it's that first round pedigree. Had he been drafted in the 2nd round or even a 3rd round, people
I think you're right. I think he plays more like a 3rd round pick right now. And that's what your expectations would be totally different if he was a 3rd round guy, but he's not.
Yeah. So and that's our bias too. So I mean, you got to try to keep it real on both sides of it. So yeah, last topic, and feel free to raise anything you want after this. But I just think if there's a theme for the season, it's definitely Tortorella trying to get inside their heads. You look what he's doing with Cam York and calling him out, saying, we don't have to wait for the kind of his talent to come out. Why wait? Let's, it's here now. And I think he's not going to invest those kind of words in a player that he's going to send down or anything like that. No, he's going to try to work more out of the player. And he thinks, obviously, you hope that Torts has made the right judgment that he can take it. Cam can just take it in stride and follow the direction of Brad Shaw, who's a very good defensive coach, real cerebral guy. So that's interesting. And then also how we talked about how the team carries themselves and how he's worried about that, especially when there's momentum shifts. And it's like when things don't go their way, and this has been something that other general managers I've seen, like The Athletic had an article and talking about the Flyers, when things don't go their way or they get penalties, they start bitching and they start to shrug their shoulders and all that. And this is what Torts is going after. He's trying to get them to be more even keeled, to take things in stride and be more professional about, how they go about their business. And it's something he noticed when he watched video last year. He sees a little bit of that when he went into training camp and watching some of the scrimmages. So, and you saw that, kind of like Boston. They came out like a house of fire, right? And then Boston just took over, and the Flyers more or less kind of rolled over.
Let them take over. Yeah. Let them take over.
Yeah, and then last night was a little bit more, as Tortorella was saying, a little more competitive throughout the entire contest. Even though that once again they lose, they had some good chances to tie the game. But it seems like, and I'll let you talk because I've got diarrhea in the mouth here. It just seems like this has been a very uneven training camp with, like what Jordan was saying about the systems being installed late and all that. I think this, like we were saying before we got on, these first 15 games, they're going to be a mess. And there's going to be people saying like, what the F is going on here? And I can see that. I don't see it just coming together. And if Provy and, Tony D'Angelo stunk, quote unquote, the first time out, it's not going to magically get better game 1. All right, I'll stop there.
No. I totally agree with you. I mean, I had it in my notes, like I said, and I touched on it briefly. This is going to be like, 4-2 games, 3-1 games, 3-0 games. It's going to be like the Tort factor is going to keep them in it, and the fact that they're, maybe Carter Hart can steal some games, but more importantly, because I guess coming into camp here and doing the eye in the sky like he did to see actually who came into shape, and who gave it all during the games and the practices, and then deciding, okay, well, send these guys down and I'll work with my system with what I got left now. But Is it a little too late? I don't know. I'm not gonna second guess a Stanley Cup coach, but I say it makes me sit there and go, well, he's in no rush either. If you're gonna build something, you build it right. You find the right pieces that you're gonna fit, and you do it the right way. So, and I think that's what he's doing here. The product is not going to be on the ice. Is not going to be what anybody wants. The first 15, 20 games. It's going to be. And possibly, I'll call it now. First 20 games, they win 3-4 games. That's it. I'm going to say that, and that might be on the high side. The over under is 4. Like for that. But I can totally see that because you're still fiddling and you're trying to figure out what you have and instilling your systems. And if you're going to do it, you do it the right way. And you take these younger players and you show them, like your Cam York, for instance, that look, I might have singled you out. It's because I used to say this to people in kitchens when I was working. Look, I only yell because I care. It's when I stop yelling. That's when you get worried because I've given up on you. I don't care anymore. I only want you to get better. And I think that's the approach that is going to be taken to this team is these younger players are going to see a lot of time and we're going to have to allow them to make the mistakes to get better. And we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. I don't know if it's going to be quite all that bad, but he's taking the long view. There's no doubt because, like we were saying, this has been so disjointed, and I've never seen a camp quite like this. But this is also the year that the Flyers are trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's a weeding out process, and they're going to try to see which guys belong here for the long term, and which guys don't, and I don't think the GM is going to make it. Yeah. I don't see that. I think, like I've said before, I think Tortorella clearly has more job security, and we'll see that in, going forward. So next week, believe it or not, we have a season preview with, I believe, Kevin Durso from ESPN, and it's getting to be a little bit of a tradition with us. So, yeah, Jordan this week and Kevin next week, and who knows what going forward. So, Chef, I think that's it. Any final thoughts before we call it a night?
No, yeah, and if you want to, I'll give the calling cards now. You want to find me at Chef Del FB on Twitter? You can find me. I'll interact with you. I'll dispute you. I'll be whatever. And I like a good spirited conversation.
Yeah, that's great. So the Flyers have let me see. They have a practice tomorrow, and they have a game tomorrow night versus the Islanders to complete the exhibition season, I believe, if I have my dates right. And, so then they submit the rosters on the 10th, and we play on the 13th in the season opener at the Wells Fargo Center versus the New Jersey Devils. And you can find me, Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. Isaiah, don't forget the _ 520. And, of course, you can follow Dan Silver at DSilver88, at DSilver88 when he's not imbibing. And he'll get back to you about hockey and maybe a little bit about horse racing as well. And, of course, you can follow the O&B Puckcast at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck, like we talked about earlier. So until next week, our season preview show. We're wondering what's going to change between now and then. That should be very interesting. Until then, everybody, take care.